things over the years.
Last night, John, the president said that we will degrade and destroy ISIS, and he talked about an airstrike. I think for most Americans, they had never heard of this group until they saw the beheading, the brutal beheading of Mr. Foley. Do you think an airstrike can take this group out?
Well, not a single airstrike. What you have...
A quick interruption. The reason I'm showing you the homeland thing down there is because that term was most notably used in Germany when Hitler was talking about defending from the terrorists that burned down the Reichstag. Homeland is that's not American. That's a German term. Homeland. It has a connotation. It's wrong.
Who was on the ground fighting for ISIS in Syria, who returned home and on the way decided to carry out an attack. And when he was captured at the airport and they recovered the weapon, it was wrapped in an ISIS flag at that checkpoint. So you have to look at that case. The man who was arrested coming back from Syria, who when they raided his home in Toulouse, France, had the explosive. You have to look at some of these other cases where they have already returned, either carrying out plans and executing plans. Haven't seen it here, but that's a concern.
Commissioner, you said the threat is growing, so what specific steps are you taking here in New York and other commissioners that you may know of in terms of protecting a city? What are you doing differently?
Not differently, probably just expanding upon the already formidable expertise that the NYPD developed since 9/11. Predecessor Commissioner Kelly had really built a world-class counterterrorism operation here.
Now behind me they're talking about the homeland and how to protect us and how the threat is growing. But here's the thing. The threat isn't growing because ISIS, well, it is kind of growing because ISIS is a bad group. That's obvious. The problem is that our security, it's not worth shit right now, okay? And the perfect example is Alex Jones put up a video of one of his reporters dressing up like a ISIS terrorist with a fake head and an ISIS flag and walking over the shallow part of the Rio Grande down south and then walking back after he pretends to chop a head off and says, "Look, I just crossed the border. Your borders are wide open." What the hell? So they don't need to get on an airplane to do anything. They can get in here through the Mexican border, buy a passport on the black market, get on a plane and crash it. And they're not sealing up the border. And they're talking about how we're getting, this is more dangerous. That doesn't really sit well with me. I don't know about all you guys, but to me that's like a no-brainer. You gotta have a somewhat secure border before you can say, oh, we're defending against terrorism. How are you defending against terrorism if they can just walk across our border? It doesn't make any sense. Oh God. A moment of silence for the victims of 9/11, which probably wouldn't have happened if people were allowed to have guns on planes, because how are you going to defeat guns with box cutters? Oh wait, you can't. And as for the rumor that any gun going off in a cabin of a Boeing 747 would instantly make the whole plane go, well, I hate to burst your bubble, but the physics of that just doesn't add up. In all reality, you need something like a shotgun or something big like a 44 Magnum to put a big enough hole in a plane to make it depressurized. 22s, 32s, 17 HMRs, 9mm, which is probably one of the most common. These weapons, most likely, even if they went through the fuselage and defending against terrorists, would not damage the plane enough to crash. Just saying. I mean, you can ask some experts. I almost was a pilot. I've flown planes before. I've landed, took off before. I logged tremendous hours on a simulator, and I know some pilots, and I talked to them. I asked them. They told me. Now, if you can't trust a pilot, and I know it's not an engineer, but I've also talked to some people who know a little bit about engineering, and no, planes won't depressurize when they get a little tiny bullet hole in them. So guns on airplanes is relatively safe, and if we had that, we wouldn't have 9/11 and wouldn't be having a memorial right now. Which means we need something. I'll give you this right there. You can look at that real quick. But okay, now if we obeyed something very simple, which is Constitution of the United States, and in it we have a very important part that had it been obeyed, and people look at the Constitution sometimes and they're like, oh, well, that's just an antiquated document. No, this is a document of law. This is the law of our country. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. They infringed before 9/11. Private companies are infringing. Corporations are infringing. And government is infringing. This is the law of the United States, ladies and gentlemen. Where's the second? Hold on. Article 1, Article 2. As you can see. So now you know that the law says we're supposed to be allowed to carry guns. Where are you allowed to carry them? Anywhere. As long as you're not infringing on the rights of others. So as long as it's holstered and you're not using it, you can go pick up your kid at school. Well, if there's parents with guns at schools, who's going to go in and mass shoot at school? Oh wait, nobody. But here's the thing. You look at the laws, and what does the law say? You can't have it in a post office. You can't have it in a courthouse. You can't have it in the White House. In other words, our politicians have armed people around them. They're allowed, if they want, to have a gun on them in all these areas, but we're not. That's because they're superior to us, or at least they like to think they are. But not according to this. According to this Constitution, we are supreme. We have all the political power. Well, it's inherent in the people, according to the Constitution. So, know your Constitution, research Carl Miller. Have a great day, and remember the 3,000 people that died on 9/11 because our government's a bunch of idiots. Have a good one, people.